The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky surface of Kepler 442b. The Staff Sergeant Jake Miller adjusted his rifle strap and checked his communication device one more time. The planet looked like Earth in many ways, with its blue sky and distant mountains, but the air felt different here, thicker somehow. His team of 5 soldiers had been walking for 3 hours since landing, following the coordinates that command had given them. "Sarge, you getting anything on the scanner?" Private Danny Chen asked. Wiping sweat from his forehead with his sleeve, Jake looked down at the small device clipped to his belt. 3 red dots blinked steadily about 200 meters ahead. Still there. Same position they were in 20 minutes ago. "Either they're waiting for us, or they're really good at sitting still." Corporal Amy Foster laughed quietly. "Maybe they're taking a nap." "Aliens don't nap." "Foster," said Private Tony Adams, the youngest member of their team. "At least I don't think they do." "How would you know?" Foster shot back. "You ever met an alien before?" "Neither of you." "Quiet, both of you," Jake said, though he wasn't really annoyed. The nervous chatter helped keep everyone calm. This was humanity's first official contact with an alien species, and they had been chosen to make the initial approach. No pressure at all. The red dots on his scanner began to move. Jake held up his hand, and his team stopped walking.
The dots
were coming toward them now, moving at a steady pace. Jake's heart began to beat faster. After months of preparation and briefings, this was actually happening. "Remember what they taught us?" Jake said quietly. "Keep your weapons lowered but ready. No sudden movements. Let me do the talking, unless they speak to you directly. And for God's sake, don't point your guns at them unless I give the order." "Copy." "That, Sarge," the team replied in unison. They walked forward slowly, climbing a small hill that blocked their view of the valley beyond. When they reached the top, Jake saw them. 5 figures stood in a line about 50 meters away, and they definitely were not human. The aliens were tall, maybe 7 feet each, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Their bodies were thin but not weak-looking, and they moved with a grace that reminded Jake of dancers. Each alien wore a form-fitting suit that looked like it was made from liquid metal, and their faces were beautiful in a way that made Jake's chest feel tight. 2 of the aliens were clearly female, with softer features and longer hair that fell in waves down their backs. The hair looked like spun silver. The other 3 appeared to be male, with broader shoulders and shorter hair. All of them had large eyes that seemed to shift color from blue to green to purple as Jake watched. "Holy shit," Tony whispered. "Language," Jake murmured back. But he understood the feeling. These beings looked like something from a dream, too perfect to be real. The aliens began walking toward them, and Jake's team moved forward as well. When they were about 10 meters apart, both groups stopped. The center alien, one of the males, raised his hand in what might have been a greeting. Jake did the same. "We are Zephyrians," the alien said, and Jake was surprised to hear perfect English coming from its mouth. "I am called Dexmar. These are my companions. We welcome you to our world." "I'm Staff Sergeant Jake Miller, United Earth Military," Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady.
"Ease."
"We're honored to meet you." Dexmar nodded. "We have been watching your species for some time. Your arrival here was not unexpected. We wish to establish peaceful relations between our peoples. That's what we want to," Jake said. He gestured to the 2 female aliens who stood slightly behind Dexmar. "May I ask their names?" "This is LaRouche," Dexmar said, indicating the taller of the 2 females. "And this is Verenith. They are our most gifted scientists. They have studied your species extensively." LaRouche stepped forward and bowed her head slightly. "We are pleased to meet humans in person at last." Her voice was like music, soft and melodic in a way that made Jake want to hear her speak again. Verenith moved beside her, and Jake noticed that both females were staring at him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Not in a bad way, exactly, but like they were trying to memorize every detail of his face. "The pleasure is ours," Jake said, and he meant it. Despite the strangeness of the situation, these aliens seemed genuinely friendly. The wind picked up then, blowing across the valley and ruffling Jake's hair. It was a warm breeze, carrying the scent of something like flowers mixed with ozone. Jake barely noticed it. but the effect on the two female aliens was immediate and dramatic. LaRussian's eyes suddenly went very wide. Her pupils expanded until they were almost completely black. She took a sharp breath and stepped closer too. Jake, her head tilted slightly, as if she were listening to something only she could hear. Varaneth made a small sound in the back of her throat, almost like a whimper, and her hands began to shake. The markings on both females' skin, which Jake had barely noticed before, began to glow with a soft blue light that pulsed in rhythm with. Their breathing, Jake realized, had become much faster and deeper than it had been moments before. LaRussian, Dexmar said, his voice sharp with concern. What is wrong? LaRussian wasn't looking at Dexmar anymore. She was staring directly at Jake with an expression he couldn't quite identify. Hunger, maybe? Or desperation. Varaneth moved closer to her companion, and both females were now standing less than 5 feet from Jake's position. Varaneth said, but her voice sounded different now, breathless. The scent. It's like nothing I've ever experienced. What scent? Tony asked, looking around nervously. Jake could see that something was very wrong. The 3 male aliens were backing away from their female companions, their expressions showing fear and confusion. LaRussian reached out one hand toward Jake, her fingers trembling. We must go, Dexmar said suddenly. Now, this is not safe. Wait, Jake said, what's happening? Are they sick? But the male aliens were already moving, surrounding LaRussian and Varaneth, and pulling them away, despite their obvious reluctance to leave. The females kept looking back at Jake over their shoulders as they were led down the hill, their glowing markings still pulsing brightly. We will contact you again soon, Dexmar called back. There are things we must discuss, important things, but not now. Not like this. Within minutes, all 5 aliens had disappeared over the ridge, leaving Jake and his team standing alone in the valley, staring at the empty space where they had been. Well, Amy Foster said after a long moment, that was weird. Jake nodded slowly, still trying to process what he had just witnessed. That was definitely weird. The walk back to base camp took 2 hours, and Jake's mind kept replaying the strange encounter over and over. His team was quiet, each soldier lost in their own thoughts about what they had witnessed. The 2 alien females had acted like they were in some kind of trance, and the way they had stared at him made Jake's skin crawl with unease. Base camp, this is Miller. Jake spoke into his radio as they approached the cluster of temporary buildings that served as their forward operating post. We're coming in. I need to speak with Colonel Harrison immediately. Copy that, Sergeant. The colonel's waiting for you in the command tent. Colonel Pete Harrison was a large man with gray hair and tired eyes who had been fighting wars longer than Jake had been alive. He looked up from a stack of reports when Jake entered the tent, waving him toward a folding chair. How did it go? Out there, son? Harrison asked. Please tell me we didn't start an interplanetary war on our first day. Jake sat down heavily and rubbed his forehead. I don't think so, sir, but something happened. Something strange. Harrison leaned back in his chair. Strange how? Jake told him everything, from the initial meeting to the way the 2 female aliens had reacted when the wind changed. Harrison listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each detail. And you have no idea what caused this reaction? Harrison asked when Jake finished. None, sir. 1 minute they were normal, the next minute they were. Acting like they were drugged or something? The male aliens seemed scared of them. Harrison picked up his pen and made a few notes on a pad. I want you to report to Dr. Carter immediately. She's our xenobiology specialist, and if anyone can figure out what happened, it's her. Jake found Dr. Lisa Carter in the science tent, hunched over a computer screen displaying atmospheric readings from the morning's mission. She was a small woman with short brown hair and thick glasses, and she had a reputation for being brilliant but difficult to work with. Doctor? Jake knocked on the tent pole. Colonel Harrison sent me to talk to you. She looked up from her screen, blinking owlishly behind her glasses. Ah, Sergeant Miller. Yes, I've been expecting you. Please, sit down. I have some very interesting data to show you. Jake pulled up a chair beside her workstation. The screen showed a complex graph with multiple colored lines running across it. This is the atmospheric analysis from your mission this morning, Dr. Carter explained, pointing to the display. These readings show the chemical composition of the air at the meeting site. Most of it is exactly what we expected, but there are several anomalies. What kind of anomalies? Pheromones, she said simply. Human pheromones, specifically male human pheromones. The levels spiked dramatically right around the time you reported the aliens began acting strangely. Jake stared at the graph. Are you saying I caused their reaction? That's exactly what I'm saying. The wind shifted and carried your scent directly to them. Within seconds, both females began displaying what I can only describe as extreme biological arousal. Jake felt his face grow hot. Biological arousal. Dr. Carter adjusted her glasses. Yes. Elevated heart rate, dilated pupils, increased breathing, trembling. And according to your report, some kind of bioluminescent response. These are all classic signs of sexual excitement in most species. But they're aliens, Jake protested. How could human pheromones affect them? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Dr. Carter turned back to her computer and pulled up another screen. I've been analyzing the atmospheric data all afternoon, and I think I may have found something. The new display showed a molecular structure that looked like a complex geometric pattern. This is the chemical signature of your pheromones, Sergeant. And this, she clicked to another screen, is a similar compound that appeared in the air during the encounter. The aliens were releasing their own pheromones. Jake looked at the two molecular structures. Even to his untrained eye, they looked remarkably similar. They're almost identical. Not almost. They're complementary. It's like two pieces of a puzzle that fit together perfectly. Dr. Carter leaned back in her chair. I've never seen anything like it. It's as if your species and theirs are biologically designed to interact with each other. Meanwhile, high above the planet's surface, the Zephyrian mothership Starlight Path hung in orbit like a silver needle against the black of space. In the medical bay, Flarusian and Varanith lay on examination tables, surrounded by scanning equipment and concerned medical staff. Catherine, the ship's chief medical officer, studied the readouts with growing alarm. Both females were displaying symptoms he had never seen before in 30 years of practice. Their hormone levels were off the charts. Their neural activities showed patterns associated with deep emotional bonding. And their reproductive systems had activated in ways that should have been impossible. How long since their last mating cycle? He asked his assistant. Larouchian completed hers 3 years ago. Ganeth had hers 5 years ago. Neither should be capable of entering another cycle for at least 2 more years. Catherine frowned. Zephyrian females only experience mating cycles once every 7 years, and only when exposed to the correct pheromonal triggers from compatible males. It was a carefully controlled biological process that had kept their species stable for thousands of years. Run a full genetic analysis, he ordered. I want to know exactly what's happening to them. On the examination table, Larouchian stirred and opened her eyes. The bioluminescent markings on her skin were still glowing faintly, pulsing and slow. Hypnotic patterns, Kethron, she said weakly. What's wrong with me? I feel like I'm burning from the inside. You're safe, he assured her. But I need you to tell me exactly what happened when you met the humans. Every detail. Larouchian closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. There was a scent. Unlike anything I've ever experienced. It was like coming home and falling in love, and finding salvation all at the same time. When I smelled it, everything in my body came alive. I wanted to get closer to the source, to breathe it in, to never let it go. And the source was the human male? Yes, the one called Jake. But it wasn't just desire, Catherine. It was recognition. Like my body knew him, even though my mind had never seen him before. Catherine's assistant appeared at his elbow with a datapad. Doctor, you need to see this. The genetic analysis shows some very unusual results. Catherine took the pad and scanned the data. His eyes widened as he read. This can't be right. Run it again. I already did. 3 times. The results are consistent. What? Is it? Larouchian asked, struggling to sit up. Catherine looked at her with an expression of complete bewilderment. According to these readings, Your body is recognizing the human male as a genetically compatible mate. Not just compatible, but optimal. The reaction you experienced wasn't random biological attraction, it was your reproductive system responding to what it perceives as the perfect genetic match. But that's impossible, Varaneth said, from the other table. We've never encountered humans before. How could my body recognize something it's never seen? Kethron shook his head slowly. Don't know, but I intend to find out. Because if these readings are correct, we may be dealing with something far more significant than simple biological incompatibility. We may be dealing with destiny. Back on the planet's surface, Jake sat in the mess tent, picking at his dinner. While his teammates talked excitedly about the day's events, he couldn't shake the image of those two alien females staring at him with such intense longing in their eyes. You okay, Sarge? Amy Foster asked, sliding into the seat across from him. You look like you've seen a ghost. Just thinking, Jake replied. About what Dr. Carter said. About the pheromones. Hey, don't beat yourself up about it, Foster said. It's not like you did it on purpose. How are you supposed to know that? Alien chicks would go crazy for your manly scent. Jake almost smiled at that. Yeah, well, I have a feeling this is just the beginning. Something tells me we're going to be hearing from our new friends again real soon. He was right. At that very moment, high above them, the Zephyrian High Council was convening an emergency session to discuss the implications of what had happened. The debate would rage for hours, with some calling for immediate retreat and others arguing for further contact. But one thing was certain. The relationship between humans and Zephyrians had become far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. Ambassador Quinn Roberts had been trying to establish contact with the Zephyrian mothership for 3 days without success. Every message he sent received the same automated response. The Zephyrian delegation is temporarily unavailable for diplomatic contact. Please stand by for further instructions. Quinn paced back and forth in the communications tent, his expensive suit wrinkled from lack of sleep. He had spent 20 years building his reputation as Earth's finest diplomat, and now it felt like everything was falling apart because of one chance encounter in a valley. Sir, his aide Marcus Webb said from the communications console, we're receiving an incoming transmission from the Zephyrian vessel. Quinn straightened his tie and moved to the screen. Put it through. The face that appeared belonged to an older Zephyrian male with silver markings around his eyes. His expression was cold and formal. I am High Counselor Zephyr, the alien said without preamble. Speak for the Zephyrian High Council in this matter. High Counselor, I'm Ambassador Roberts. We've been trying to reach your delegation for several days. We're concerned that something may have gone wrong during our first meeting. Zephyr's expression did not change. Indeed, something has gone wrong. Your species presents an unacceptable biological hazard to our people. The Council has voted to classify humans as a contamination risk. All contact between our species is hereby suspended indefinitely. Quinn felt his stomach drop. I don't understand what kind of biological hazard. Our medical teams cleared all contact protocols before the meeting. Your medical teams did not account for the effect your pheromones have on our females. 2 of our most respected scientists are currently under medical quarantine because of exposure to your soldier. They may never recover. Recover from what? Quinn asked desperately. Please, help me understand what happened so we can fix it. The transmission cut out, leaving Quinn staring at a blank screen. He turned to Marcus, who was frantically working at the communications panel. They've gone dark, sir, Marcus reported. All communication channels are blocked. They're not responding to any of our frequencies. Quinn slumped into a chair. In less than 5 minutes, humanity's first attempt at joining the Galactic community had been completely destroyed. He picked up his secure phone and dialed Earth. Command, get me the Secretary General, he said when the call connected. We have a problem. Back at the base camp, Colonel Harrison called Jake into his office. Dr. Carter was already there, along with Captain Rick Stone, Jake's commanding officer. All 3 looked like they had been up all night. Sit down, Sergeant, Harrison said. I need to talk about your role in this situation. Jake sat down and looked around the room. What's my role, sir? Dr. Carter leaned forward. Jake, I've been analyzing the data from your encounter for the past 3 days. The biological reaction those alien females had to your presence was unprecedented. I need to run some tests to understand exactly what's happening. What kind of tests? Nothing. Invasive, she assured him. Blood samples, pheromone analysis, genetic screening. I need to map your biochemical profile and see if we can identify what triggered such a strong response.
Captain Stone spoke up.
The problem is, Sergeant, the aliens have cut off all contact. They're calling us a biological hazard. If we can't figure out what happened and how to control it, this whole mission is over. Jake looked at each of them in turn. So do you want me to be a guinea pig? We want you to help us save this mission, Harrison said bluntly. You're the only one who was present during the incident. You're our best chance at understanding what went wrong. Jake thought about the two alien females, about the way they had looked at him with such desperate hunger in their eyes. He had been having dreams about them for the past 3 nights, dreams that left him confused and unsettled. What if the tests are dangerous? He asked. There's always some risk, Dr. Carter admitted. But the alternative is that humanity loses its chance at peaceful contact with an advanced alien civilization. The choice is yours, Jake. I won't force you to do this. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. Okay, let's do it. Dr. Carter's laboratory had been expanded significantly since their first conversation. New equipment had been brought in from the main ship, and she had a team of 3 assistants working around the clock to analyze the data from the encounter. Jake sat on an examination table while Dr. Carter drew blood samples and attached monitoring equipment to his chest and arms. The process took most of the morning with various scans and tests that Jake didn't understand. Interesting, Dr. Carter murmured, as she reviewed the results on her computer screen. Very interesting indeed. What is it? Jake asked. Your pheromone profile is unlike anything I've seen before. Most humans produce a standard mix of chemical signals, but yours shows some very unusual compounds. It's as if your body is producing chemicals that shouldn't exist in human biology. Is that bad? I don't know yet. But it might explain why the alien females reacted so strongly. These compounds you're producing might be specifically designed to trigger reproductive responses in their species. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Designed by who? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? While Jake was undergoing tests high above the planet, Larouchian and Veroneth were conducting their own secret research. Despite being confined to the medical bay, they had managed to access the ship's main database and were studying everything they could find about human biology. Look at this, Veroneth said, pointing to a genetic analysis displayed on her tablet. The human DNA structure shows markers that match our own ancestral codes. Larouchian moved closer to examine the data. Her condition had improved somewhat over the past few days, but she still felt a constant ache in her chest whenever she thought about the human male named Jake. These sequences here, she said, highlighting several sections of the genetic code. They're identical to passages in the origin texts, the ancient stories about our people's beginning. You think the humans might be our origin kin? Veroneth asked. The lost species from the old legends? I think it's possible. The biological response we experienced wasn't random attraction. It was recognition. Our bodies knew something our minds had forgotten. Veroneth pulled up another file on her tablet. According to the historical records, our birth rates have been declining for over 2,000 years. Each generation produces fewer children than the last. At our current rate, the species will be extinct within 500 years. And the origin texts say that only the return of our kin can restore the life force to our people, Larouchian finished. Vera, what if the humans aren't a threat? What if they're our salvation? Then we need to convince the council before they make a terrible mistake. But convincing the council would not be easy. The high counselors were ancient and set in their ways, and the idea that salvation might come from an alien species was difficult for them to accept. Down on the planet, Jake finished his tests and returned to his quarters. He had barely sat down on his bunk when Captain Stone appeared in his doorway. Sergeant, I need you to come with me. Ambassador Roberts wants to speak with you. Jake found the ambassador in the command tent, looking like he had aged 10 years. In the past week, Quinn looked up when Jake entered and gestured to a chair. Sergeant Miller, I understand you've volunteered to help Dr. Carter with her research. I want you to know that your country appreciates your sacrifice. Thank you, sir. But I also need you to understand something. If we can't resolve this situation, if we can't convince the aliens that we're not a threat, then this mission ends. In failure, humanity's first contact with an alien species will be remembered as a disaster. Jake met the ambassador's eyes. What do you need me to do, sir? I need you to be ready for anything. Dr. Carter thinks she might be able to develop some kind of suppression technology, something to block or reduce your pheromone output. If she succeeds, I want you to volunteer for another meeting with the aliens, even though the first one went badly, especially because the first one went badly. We need to prove that we can control this biological response, that we're not danger to their people. Jake thought about this for a moment. The idea of facing those two alien females again made his heart race, but not entirely from fear. I'll do it, he said finally. Whatever it takes, Quinn nodded. Good man. Let's hope Dr. Carter can work a miracle. Outside the tent, the sun was setting over the alien landscape, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Jake stood there for a moment, watching the alien sunset and wondering what tomorrow would bring. Somewhere up in the darkness above, he knew that LaRussian and Varaneth were probably looking down at the same sky, thinking about him just as he was thinking about them. The thought should have worried him more than it did. Varaneth had not slept for 3 days. She sat hunched over her research station in the medical bay, surrounded by stacks of ancient texts and modern data analysis. The ship's medical staff had given up trying to make her rest, and even Catherine had stopped checking on her every hour. Her breakthrough came at 4 in the morning, ship time. She was cross-referencing human genetic markers with passages from the oldest Zephyrian historical records when she found it. A section of text that had been dismissed by scholars for centuries as pure mythology. Lyra, she called out urgently. Lyra, wake up. You need to see this. Lyrusian stirred on her medical bed, her bioluminescent markings flickering weakly as she opened her eyes. What is it? Did you find something? Varaneth rushed over with her tablet, nearly tripping over. The monitoring cables that connected LaRussian to the medical equipment? The origin texts? The section about the Great Departure? I think I know what it means now. She held up the tablet, showing a passage written in ancient Zephyrian script. Listen to this. In the time before memory, when the stars were young, and our people walked among many worlds, there came a sundering. The life-givers were taken from us by the great darkness, scattered across the void like seeds on the wind. But the texts promise their return when the dying light of our people grows dim, when the birth songs no longer echo in our halls. Then shall the life-givers come back to us, wearing strange forms, but carrying the same sacred essence that flows. In our veins, LaRussian sat up slowly, her eyes widening as she processed the words. Life-givers? You think the text is referring to humans? I think humans are our ancestors, Lyra, not descendants' ancestors. I think millions of years ago, our species and theirs were one people. Somehow they were separated from us and evolved on a different world. Varaneth pulled up another screen showing genetic comparison charts. Look at this data. Human DNA contains dormant sequences that are active in our genetic code. It's like they're carrying sleeping versions of our own biological systems. That would explain the pheromone compatibility, LaRussian said, her scientific mind racing, even as her body still ached with the memory of Jake's scent. Our reproductive systems recognized something familiar in the human male, something that triggered our deepest biological responses. More than that, Varaneth said excitedly. At our birth rate data, over the past 3,000 years, it's been declining steadily, generation after generation. We've been slowly dying out, and nobody knows why. She showed LaRussian a graph that painted a grim picture. The Zephyrian population had peaked at over 10 billion individuals 2 millennia ago. Current projections showed total extinction within 500 years. But what if the decline isn't natural? Varaneth continued. What if we need genetic input from our origin kin to maintain our species? What if we've been slowly dying because we lost contact with the humans? LaRussian stared at the data, her mind reeling with the implications. If you're right, then the humans aren't a threat to us. They're our salvation. We have to tell the council, Varaneth said. Need to know about this before they make any permanent decisions about breaking contact. Down on the planet's surface, Dr. Carter was having her own breakthrough. Jake sat in her laboratory, connected to a complex array of monitoring equipment that tracked everything from his brainwaves to his skin temperature. Try to think about the encounter again, Dr. Carter instructed. Focus on the moment when the alien females first reacted to your presence. Jake closed his eyes and let his mind drift back to that strange afternoon in the valley. He remembered the wind shifting, carrying his scent toward the aliens. Remembered the way LaRussian and Varaneth had suddenly changed, their eyes going wide and their breathing becoming rapid and shallow. There, Dr. Carter said, watching her monitors. Your pheromone output just spiked. Whatever you're thinking about right now is triggering the same response you had during the encounter. I'm thinking about them, Jake admitted, about the way they looked at me. Double quotes. Dr. Carter made notes on her tablet. Interesting. It's not just a passive biological response. There's an emotional component as well. You're producing stronger pheromones when you think about the aliens. She pulled up a molecular analysis on her computer screen.
Jake, I need to show you something.
These are your pheromone compounds, the ones you produce when you think about the Zephyrian females. The screen showed a complex chemical structure that looked like an intricate piece of architecture. Oh, look at this, Dr. Carter said, switching to another display. This is a similar compound that we detected in the air during your encounter. The aliens were releasing pheromones too. Jake studied both structures. They look like they fit together. Exactly. Like puzzle pieces. I think your species and theirs are biologically compatible in ways that shouldn't be possible. It's as if you were designed to interact with each other. But how is that possible? We evolved on different worlds, millions of light years apart. Dr. Carter removed her glasses and cleaned them thoughtfully. I have a theory, but you're not going to like it. Try me. What if you didn't evolve on different worlds? Millions of years ago, humans and Zephyrians were the same species. What if some kind of disaster or war separated your people, and you evolved separately over time? Jake stared at her. You're saying we're related to them? I'm saying it's possible. The genetic compatibility, the pheromone interaction, the way their bodies responded to your presence. It all points to some kind of shared ancestry. If that's true, then why are they so afraid of us? 'Cause they don't know, Dr. Carter said simply. They're reacting to the biological response without understanding what it means. If I'm right about this, then you and the Zephyrian females aren't experiencing random attraction. You're experiencing recognition. Your bodies are remembering something your minds have forgotten. Meanwhile, high above the planet, LaRussian and Varaneth were preparing to make the most important presentation of their lives. They had requested an emergency meeting with the High Council, and after much debate, the request had been granted. The council chamber was a vast circular room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. 12 elderly Zephyrians sat in floating chairs arranged in a circle, their faces stern and disapproving. High Counselor Zephyr presided over the gathering, his silver markings glowing with authority. You have requested this meeting to discuss the human situation, Zephyr said formally. The council has already voted on this matter. The humans are a biological hazard, and contact with them is forbidden. LaRussian stepped forward, her legs still shaky from her extended medical treatment. Honored counselors, we believe the council has made a mistake. The humans are not our enemies. They are our lost family. A murmur of disapproval ran through the chamber. Counselor Nelthor, the oldest member of the group, leaned forward in her chair. Explain yourself, young scientist. What evidence do you have for such a claim? Varaneth activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. The origin texts appeared in glowing letters, along with genetic comparison charts and population data. The evidence is in our own history, Varaneth said. The origin texts speak of the life-givers who were separated from us in ancient times. The humans match every description in the texts. More importantly, their genetic structure contains dormant sequences that are identical to our own active genes. She highlighted sections of the genetic comparison. Look at these markers. They're not just similar, they're complementary. Our species fit together like two halves of a whole. And our population decline? LaRouche added. For 3,000 years, we've been slowly dying out. Our birth rates have dropped to critical levels. What if the decline isn't natural? What if we need genetic input from our origin kin to survive? Council members exchanged glances, some looking intrigued, despite their skepticism. Counselor Druckmer, a middle-aged male with blue markings, spoke up. Even if what you say is true, the biological reaction you experienced was dangerous. You both nearly died from the exposure. We didn't nearly die, LaRouche said firmly. We nearly came alive. For the first time in our lives, our bodies responded the way they were meant to respond, the way they did when our ancestors walked among the humans. Zethver raised his hand for silence. This is all a very interesting theory, but we cannot risk the safety of our people based on ancient myths and genetic speculation. Then let us test it, Varaneth said desperately. Let us return to the planet and make contact again. But this time, let us go prepared. Let us study the interaction properly instead of running away from it. The council chamber fell silent as the members considered this proposal. Finally, Zethver spoke. The council will consider your request, but understand. If you are wrong, if the humans truly are a threat, then both of your lives will be forfeit. LaRouche and Varaneth looked at each other, then back at the council. We understand, LaRouche said, and we accept the risk. Back on the planet, Jake was finishing his session with Dr. Carter when Captain Stone burst into the laboratory. We just received a transmission from the Zephyrian ship, he announced. They want to arrange another meeting. But this time, they're making some very specific demands. Dr. Carter looked up from her equipment. What kind of demands? The device Dr. Carter built looked like a thick metal collar with blinking lights and thin wires that connected to small patches Jake had to stick on his neck and chest. She had worked for 36 hours straight to construct it using the technical specifications the Zephyrians had provided. And now she was making final adjustments while Jake sat patiently on the examination table. The theory is simple, Dr. Carter explained as she calibrated the device. This collar will create an electromagnetic field around your upper body that should neutralize your pheromone output. The Zephyrian females won't be able to smell you, so they won't have the same biological reaction as before. Should neutralize? Jake asked. That doesn't sound very confident. Dr. Carter looked up from her work, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Jake, this is alien technology that I've never seen before. I've done my best to follow their specifications, but I can't guarantee it will work perfectly, or at all. What happens if it fails? Based on what we saw in the first encounter, if the suppression device fails completely, the reaction from the alien females could be even stronger than before. We're talking about potentially dangerous levels of biological arousal. Jake touched the metal collar around his neck. It felt cold and heavy, and the electromagnetic field it generated made his skin tingle strangely. And if it works too well, then you might come across as completely dead to their senses. No biological presence at all. That could be just as problematic for establishing trust. Captain Stone entered the tent carrying Jake's field gear. Transport is ready, Sergeant. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Jake stood up and began putting on his equipment. The pheromone suppression device made his movements feel awkward, and the constant tingling sensation was distracting. I'm sure we've come too far to back down now. Ambassador Roberts appeared in the doorway, looking even more tired than Dr. Carter. Jake, I want you to know that if this goes badly, if the device fails and something happens to you, Earth Command will disavow any knowledge of this mission. Officially, you'll be acting against orders. I understand, sir. But unofficially, Roberts continued, what you're doing today could save human civilization's future in space. If we can make this work, if we can prove that humans and Zephyrians can coexist, then we'll have our first real alien allies. Jake nodded and picked up his rifle. The weapon felt strange in his hands with the suppression device affecting his nervous system, but he could still handle it if necessary. Let's go make some friends, he said. The journey to the meeting site took an hour by transport vehicle. Jake's team consisted of Dr. Carter, Captain Stone, and 2 medical technicians. Carrying emergency equipment, they had been told to expect a much larger Zephyrian delegation this time, including medical staff and possibly members of their High Council. When they reached the valley where the first encounter had taken place, now Jake could see that the aliens had already arrived. 7 Zephyrian figures stood in a line about 50 meters away, and Jake immediately recognized Larouchian and Varaneth among them. Both females wore different clothing than before, silver robes that covered them from neck to feet, and they had some kind of breathing apparatus over their faces. They're taking precautions too, Dr. Carter observed. Those masks are probably designed to filter out human pheromones. Dexmar stepped forward from the alien group and raised his hand in greeting. Jake's team approached slowly, stopping when they were about 10 meters apart. Sergeant Miller, Dexmar said formally, are pleased that you agreed to this second meeting. I trust you understand the importance of what we attempt here today. I do, Jake replied. We all want the same thing, a peaceful relationship between our species, indeed. But first, we must prove that such a relationship is possible without endangering our people. Dexmar gestured to the medical equipment that both sides had brought. Our scientists will monitor the biological responses of all participants. If your suppression device functions correctly, we should detect no dangerous pheromone activity. Dr. Carter stepped forward. We're ready. To begin whenever you are. The next few minutes were tense as both sides activated their monitoring equipment and took baseline readings. Jay could feel the suppression device humming against his skin, and he noticed that the Zephyrian females seemed much calmer than they had during the first meeting. Initial readings are stable, Dr. Carter reported. The suppression field is functioning within normal parameters. Catherine, the Zephyrian medical officer, consulted his own equipment. Our sensors detect minimal pheromone activity from the human male. The baseline appears safe. Larouchian and Varaneth exchanged glances behind their protective masks. They had argued with the Council for hours about the necessity of the breathing apparatus, but the High Council had insisted on maximum safety precautions. Perhaps we could move closer? Varaneth suggested. If the suppression device is working, a closer approach should not trigger any adverse reactions. Jake looked at Dr. Carter, who nodded her approval. He walked forward slowly, closing the distance between himself and the alien delegation. When he was about 5 meters away, he stopped and waited. The Zephyrian females showed no signs of the dramatic reaction they had experienced during the first meeting. Their breathing remained steady, their pupils stayed normal, and their bioluminescent markings showed only faint, regular patterns. Excellent, Dexmar said with obvious relief. The suppression technology appears to be working perfectly. But Jake noticed something that the others missed. Although Larouchian and Varaneth weren't showing the intense biological response from before, they were still watching him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Their eyes followed his every movement, and when he shifted position, they shifted with him. Dr. Carter, Jake said quietly into his communication device. Are you seeing this? You're still reacting to me, just not as dramatically. I see it, she replied. The suppression device is working, but it's not completely blocking the pheromone interaction. It's just reducing it to manageable levels. High Counselor Zethfer had been observing the meeting from the Zephyrian mothership, and now his voice came through Dexmar's communication system. The test appears successful, Zethfer announced. However, the Council requires one final demonstration. Before we can approve continued contact between our species. What kind of demonstration? Ambassador Roberts asked. We need to verify that the suppression technology can maintain its effectiveness over an extended period. Sergeant Miller and our scientific delegation must spend 24 hours in close proximity while under constant medical monitoring. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. 24 hours with the alien females, even with the suppression device working, would be a serious test of everyone's self-control. That seems reasonable, Roberts said after a moment of consideration. Where would this extended contact take place? We have prepared a neutral facility, Dexmar explained. A temporary research station located exactly halfway between your base camp and our ship's position. Both sides will contribute medical and scientific staff. Dr. Carter looked worried. Ambassador, the suppression device hasn't been tested for extended use? We don't know if it will maintain its effectiveness over such a long period. What's the alternative? Roberts asked. If we refuse, the aliens will assume we can't control the biological effects long term. This could be our only chance to prove that coexistence is possible. Jake made the decision for all of them. I'll do it, but I want Dr. Carter monitoring me constantly. If the device starts to fail, if the readings become dangerous, I want an immediate extraction. Agreed, Roberts said. But Jake, understand that if this goes wrong, if someone gets hurt because the suppression fails, there will be serious consequences. I understand, sir. LaRussian stepped forward, removing her protective mask for the first time since the meeting began. Sergeant Miller, I want you to know that Varaneth and I volunteered for this extended contact. We believe that our species can work together safely, but we also understand the risks involved. Jake looked into her large, color-shifting eyes and felt something stir in his chest, despite the suppression device. Why are you willing to take that risk? Because Varaneth said, also removing her mask, we believe that our peoples were meant to find each other again. The biological compatibility between our species isn't an accident. It's destiny. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Jake could feel the suppression device working harder now, the tingling sensation becoming more intense as it fought to contain his body's response to the alien female's proximity. 24 hours, he said finally. Let's see if destiny can survive that long. As both sides began preparing for the extended contact experiment, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the next day would change everything. The suppression device would either prove that humans and Zephyrians could coexist safely, or it would fail in spectacular fashion and end any hope of peaceful relations between their species. Either way, there would be no going back after tomorrow. The neutral research facility looked like something from a science fiction movie. The Zephyrians had constructed it in just 12 hours using technology that seemed like magic to the human observers. The building was a perfect dome made of some kind of transparent metal, with separate sections for humans and aliens connected by a central laboratory space. Jake stood outside the facility as the sun set over the alien landscape, checking his equipment one final time. The suppression device had been working perfectly for 8 hours now, but Dr. Carter's warnings about extended use kept echoing in his mind. Remember, Dr. Carter said, as she made final adjustments to his monitoring equipment, if you feel any strange sensations, any changes in how the device is working, you call for immediate extraction. Don't try to be a hero, I got it, Doc, Jake replied. But what if the device starts working too well? What if I become completely invisible to their senses? Then we'll deal with that problem when it happens. The important thing is proving that we can control the biological effects long enough to build trust. Captain Stone appeared beside them, carrying a pack of emergency supplies. The Zephyrian delegation just arrived. Aroshin, Varaneth, and 3 medical staff. They're setting up their equipment in the alien section right now. Jake picked up his gear and headed toward the facility entrance. Time to find out if humans and aliens can really be roommates. The interior of the facility was divided in 3 sections connected by airlocks. The human section looked like a standard medical facility with monitoring equipment and sleeping quarters. The alien section was visible through transparent walls, and Jake could see the Zephyrian team arranging their own equipment, which looked far more advanced than anything the humans had brought. The central laboratory was where both species would interact during the experiment. It contained workstations for joint research, comfortable seating areas, and most importantly, atmospheric control systems that would allow both sides to monitor air quality and pheromone levels in real time. Sergeant Miller, Dexmar's voice came through the communication system. Are you ready to begin the extended contact protocol? Ready as I'll ever be, Jake replied. The first few hours went smoothly. Jake worked alongside LaRussian and Varaneth in the central laboratory, helping them analyze data about human and Zephyrian biology. The suppression device continued to function perfectly, keeping his pheromone output at safe levels. But Jake noticed that the alien females were studying him just as intently as they were studying the scientific data, when they thought he wasn't. Looking, both Larouche and Varaneth would watch his movements with obvious fascination. "Your species is remarkable," Varaneth said during a break in their work. "The way you adapt to new situations, the way you solve problems. It's very different from how Zephyrians approach challenges." "How do your people usually handle problems?" Jake asked. "Study them for a very long time," Larouche said with what might have been a smile. "Sometimes for years or decades. Analyze every possible outcome before taking action. But humans seem to dive in and figure things out as you go." "That's not always a good thing," Jake admitted. "Sometimes our approach gets us into trouble. Sometimes it saves the day," Varaneth pointed out, "like now. Zephyrian in your position would never have volunteered for this experiment. We would still be debating the risks 50 years from now." As the hours passed, Jake found himself genuinely enjoying the conversation with the alien scientists. They were intelligent, curious, and surprisingly funny once they relaxed enough to drop their formal speech patterns. The biological tension from their first meeting was still there, muted by the suppression device but not completely gone. And it created an undercurrent of awareness that made every interaction feel significant. Around midnight, facility time, Dr. Carter's voice came through Jake's earpiece with a note of concern. "Jake, I'm seeing some fluctuations in the suppression field. It's nothing dangerous yet, but the device is working harder to maintain effectiveness." "How much longer can it hold?" Jake asked quietly. "Hard to say. Maybe 6 hours, maybe 12. Alien pheromones are stronger than we expected, and they're putting stress on the system." Jake looked across the laboratory at Larouche and Varaneth, who were deep in discussion about something on their computer screen. He realized that he didn't want the experiment to end. For the first time since arriving on this planet, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. At 3 in the morning, the crisis Dr. Carter had been expecting finally arrived. Jake was working late in the laboratory with Varaneth, analyzing genetic data, when he felt the suppression device stutter against his neck. The electromagnetic field flickered for just a moment. But it was enough. Varaneth's head snapped up instantly, her pupils dilating as she caught the brief spike of his natural pheromones. Her bioluminescent markings began to glow more brightly, and her breathing became faster and deeper. "Jake," Dr. Carter's voice was urgent in his earpiece. "The suppression field just dropped to 60% effectiveness. You need to move away from the alien female immediately." But Jake didn't move away. Instead, he looked directly into Varaneth's glowing eyes and made a decision that would change everything. "It's okay," he said, both to Varaneth and to Dr. Carter. "I'm not going anywhere." "Jake, that's an order," Captain Stone's voice cut in. "Extract immediately." "No," Jake said firmly. "This is what we came here to prove, that we can handle this situation safely, that we can work together even when the technology fails." Varaneth was trembling now, her body responding to Jake's increased pheromone output. But she made no move to get closer to him. Instead, she gripped the edge of the workstation and fought to maintain control. "I can handle this," she said through gritted teeth. "The biological response is strong, but I am stronger." Larouche appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. When she saw the situation, her own markings began to glow in response to Jake's pheromones. But like Varaneth, she stayed where she was. "This is what the Council needs to see," Larouche said, her voice strained but determined. "That we can choose to control our responses. That biology doesn't have to control destiny." For the next hour, Jake worked in the laboratory with both alien females while his suppression device continued to fail gradually. The biological tension in the room was intense, almost overwhelming. But all three of them maintained their professionalism and self-control. By dawn, the suppression device was operating at only 20% effectiveness, but the crisis had passed. Larouche and Varaneth had proven that they could function normally even when exposed to high levels of human pheromones. More importantly, they had shown that the biological compatibility between their species didn't have to be a source of danger. Counselor Zephyr himself arrived at the facility as the sun rose, accompanied by Ambassador Roberts and Colonel Harrison. The delegation found Jake and the two alien scientists working calmly together, analyzing the data from their successful experiment. The Council has reviewed the monitoring data from your night together, Zethver announced. The biological responses were significant, but you maintained complete control throughout the crisis. This proves that our species can indeed coexist safely. Ambassador Roberts stepped forward. Does this mean the Zephyrian High Council is willing to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity? More than that, Zethver replied. We propose the creation of a permanent joint research facility, a place where humans and Zephyrians can work together to study our shared heritage and plan our mutual future. 6 months later, New Geneva Station hung in orbit above Kepler 44b, a marvel of combined human and Zephyrian engineering. The station housed research teams from both species working together to unlock the secrets of their common ancestry and develop new technologies that could benefit both civilizations. Jake had been appointed as the first human Zephyrian cultural liaison, working directly with Larouchian and Varanith to establish protocols for safe interaction between the species. The suppression technology had been refined and improved, allowing human males to work alongside Zephyrian females without biological complications. But Jake rarely used the suppression device anymore. He had learned to control his pheromone output naturally, and Larouchian and Varanith had developed immunity to his scent through gradual exposure. What had once been a dangerous biological reaction had become simply another aspect of their working relationship. Standing in the observation deck of New Geneva Station, looking down at the planet where everything had started, Jake reflected on how far they had all come. The biological compatibility that had nearly destroyed first contact had instead become the foundation for humanity's most important alliance. Dr. Carter joined him at the observation window, carrying a datapad full of research results. The latest genetic analysis confirms it, she said. Humans and Zephyrians definitely share common ancestors. We're not just allies, Jake. We're family. Family that almost destroyed each other because we smelled good, Jake said with a laugh. Best families usually have complicated relationships, Dr. Carter replied. But look what we built together once we figured it out.